Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Auburn, Alabama roster battle going down, and these have been an absolute blast to do. And a large part of it has been you guys in the comments section, whether you agree with the boys, whether you disagree with the boys, whether you're mixing it up with the opposing fan base. And that's the beauty of college football. The boys, we played Xbox Live as kids. We have some thick skin. Let it fly in the comments section. And before we get into it, as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. It's been a blast covering both of these programs in the portal, on the recruiting trail, breaking down spring games. Can't thank you guys enough for rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And more importantly, let it fly in the comments section. And all right, Dale, let's get into a position group by position group, stacking these two teams. Let's start with that quarterback room, Jalen Milroe, Peyton Thorne. How are we feeling?
It's got to be Jalen Milroe. I feel like people have the first couple games burned in their minds, and they think Jalen Milroe can't throw and can't play quarterback at a really high level. Towards the end of the year, he was playing very much winning football. I thought he really dialed it in. And again, Peyton Thorne, on the other hand, had a rough year pretty much all year. And there's reasons I think you can explain that away and have some optimism for a lot of improvement. The wide receiver position was poor for Auburn last year, and that was a big part of their struggles. So I think, again, a second year in this system, didn't even have a spring last year. So I think you can expect better things from Peyton Thorne, but I just don't see how you can put him above Jalen Milroe.
It's got to be Jalen Milroe sitting here early May. And I totally agree with you. Like, the narrative around Jalen Milroe, even during the offseason, is absolutely insane. Yes, he looked kind of ugly during the first couple games. Again, a lot of casual college football fans that were checked in September, watched that game against Texas, kind of wrote Jalen Milroe off, playing great football towards the end of that season. Dill, you look at Peyton Thorne, and although I'm going with Jalen Milroe, you said there were some reasons why he didn't play all that great. There were a lot of reasons, and there are a lot of reasons if you're an Auburn fan that he takes that step heading into 2024. One, wasn't in for spring practice last year. More importantly, the pass catcher room for the Auburn Tigers in 2023 was one of the worst in the SEC. Quite frankly, maybe the worst in the SEC. And then Dill, going into 2024, Hugh Freeze a little bit more hands-on with the offense, been in the system, way better weapons, Hugh Freeze controlling this offense. There are a lot of reasons to believe in Peyton Thorne. Early May, you got to go Jalen Milroe. Now, going to a position group that, in my mind, in my notes, I'm kind of going back and forth. Quite frankly, I might just fight you wherever you go. Let's talk about this running back room. Auburn, Alabama, how you stacking them?
I think I gotta go Alabama, and I think there's certainly an argument that could be made that Jarquez Hunter is the best running back on the field at this point. But again, the way Justice Haynes seems like he's developing, the way Jam Miller played towards the end of the year, the way he played in the spring game, he looked a little bit more dynamic, catches the ball really well. Then you even get back deeper into guys like Richard Young, who again, stunned he kind of was able to, or Kalen DeBoer was able to keep him in the system, just given where they're at. But that's a really deep room. I think you have a top end guy in Justice Haynes who's going to have a big year. I think you got to go Alabama. And I like Jarquez Hunter, but just the depth and the strength.
So where we sit right now, I'm going to go Auburn. And I think it's because of what you said. Like, Jarquez Hunter, I think, is a legit phenomenal running back. And this is one of those position rooms that, all right, you come talk to me middle of October. Justice Haynes, if he's kind of popping off as a second-year guy. Jam Miller, obviously, you saw him in the spring game. Think this Alabama run, and they're both really good running back rooms, but I'm going to go with Auburn. One, Jarquez Hunter, I think as of right now would be the running back I take out of both of these programs. The Alabama fans, you guys can light me up in the comment section. This one might be a really bad take. Not because Jarquez Hunter is not a good running back, just Justice Haynes, really, really special guy. I know that. But then you talk about guys like Jeremiah Cobb who can really operate in space. I'm going to go Auburn at the running back spot. I do not feel very good about it. Dill, let's move on to the wide receiver room. I feel a little bit better about this one. Still not great. Who you got?
I'm going Auburn, and I think a lot of it is because when I look at these two teams, I think Cam Coleman does feel like that bona fide number one. And again, I'm making a lot of projections. Frankly, you got to make a lot of projections for both these programs because, again, a lot of new faces in those wide receiver rooms. But Cam Coleman, you got to see him in the spring. I think he looked like that real number one, and you bring in Keandre Lambert-Smith and Robert Lewis to kind of round that room out, along with some of the other young guys from Bryce Kane and Perry Thompson. I really like the way that Auburn wide receiver room setting up, and I think the one thing that could change my opinion on it, frankly, is if Ryan Williams comes in and plays at a similar level. Because again, we just didn't get to see him in the spring, but that doesn't mean he's every bit as good as Cam Coleman and can be that guy. Because if he does play like that number one, I think you love what Alabama's wide receiver room looks like. Hopefully, Kendrick Law can get back towards the end of the year. I think when he's got the ball in his hands, he's super dynamic. I love Kobe Prentice. I thought he had a good year last year, really works that slot pretty effectively. Jeremy Bernard is a very good player in his own right. So it's tight. I just think Cam Coleman gives me that bona fide one.
Yeah, and you said, okay, we got to do a fair amount of projection. Do you have to project much for either Cam Coleman or Ryan Williams? Like, we just saw Cam Coleman in the Auburn spring game. We read the spring practice notes. So we kind of know he's going to be a dude. And I mean, if you know about Ryan Williams coming out of high school, the Auburn fans I know certainly know about Ryan Williams. You kind of feel like these two true freshmen are going to kind of hit the ground running. I'm going to go Auburn too. And I think a large part is Keandre Lambert-Smith. I'm a huge fan of, and I've been banging the table for this kid. Probably day 3 NFL draft pick. If he wasn't rotting away at that Penn State offense, I think he's a bona fide wide receiver one. You might have 2 bona fide wide receiver ones in Lambert-Smith and Cam Coleman, who I think balance each other out really, really well as well. 2 really strong rooms. I'm going to go with Auburn. You got to give Hugh Freeze, a ton of credit. He went from, again, one of, if not the worst pass catching group in the SEC last year to completely revamped room. Going to the offensive line, try to get myself at least back in good graces with Alabama. I'm going to go Alabama here. And it starts with the inside of this offensive line where I was kind of going through some of my favorite players at each position groups, looking at the interior offensive line. I think Tyler Booker and Jaden Roberts might be 2 of the top 5 interior offensive linemen in the country. And it's probably by far the best duo on the inside of that offensive line. You look at Proctor and Pritchett at the tackle spot. I really like Auburn's offensive line. I think it's really, really solid. I think you have a little bit more high upside with this Alabama. Not a little bit. I think this Alabama offensive line has a bunch of NFL caliber dudes. I'm going to go Alabama here. I think Auburn's offensive line is pretty damn good too. Who you got?
Yeah, and that is the kind of the quandary I think I'm in a little bit because I look at Auburn. I have almost 0 questions. They return a lot of production. Again, I don't think you have that top end play. Connor Lew, I really, really like. I think he's a big time player, but I don't know that you have that like Tyler Booker, Jaden Roberts, Caden Proctor kind of top end talent where those 3 guys, frankly, are all couple of round ones, couple day 2s. Like that's what they play like. I just do have some questions inherently about that center spot and maybe a little bit that right tackle spot. And I like where they're at with the right tackle spot because I thought the guys in the spring game, those younger players, look really, really good. So I don't have big questions about that. But the center spot, I certainly do with Brockermeyer leaving. I don't think that's I just don't, that feels like a loss to an extent. And again, Brailsford coming in, is he the right fit for the Alabama way? Because you're going to see it. They're going to pound the ball like they've always have. You see the spring game, you got to run it that way. That's my only question.
My take on the Parker Braille, and you hear a lot of people have questions about him going to the SEC. He's a little bit of a smaller center. Kalen DeBoer wouldn't have brought him over if he didn't believe he could play at the SEC level. Like that's kind of my take is nobody knows Parker Brailsford more than Kalen DeBoer. He wouldn't bring him over to Tuscaloosa if he had question marks about it. So I feel better than most about Parker Brailsford.
The scheme's going to be a little different. I think like we talk about what you have with those 3 guys we think are like bona fide NFL
he's between 2 monsters.
So they need to run the ball hard. They're going to run the ball in the middle. They did it in the spring game and they looked really good doing it. Again, that's not really what we saw from Parker Brailsford at Washington. He was on the move a lot. He was in space a lot. He was good. But that is my question. Again, I'm leaning Alabama just because you have that. You
look at his double team partners. Who is he going to be working with? Booker, Jaden Roberts. I feel pretty good about that duo right there. Going to the defensive line, I'll give you the first word here. I think it's really interesting, and I'll kind of give you guys my thoughts real quick. I think Auburn might have the edge at the edge rusher spot, right? Jalen McLeod, Keldrick Fuller, I think are 2 really good guys. I'm a massive fan of Amaris Williams as a true freshman. But then you look on the inside, you'll probably lean Alabama. So I think I'm kind of going through which defensive line am I going to take. I'll give it to you first, who you got Alabama, Auburn here.
Man, I agree with you on kind of the setup because I think Jalen McLeod's the best pure pass rusher on the field.
I think so too.
Come this football season. I just look at that inside. They didn't really lose that much. Tim Keenan, Tim Smith, monsters. Jaheim Otis, I feel like gets slept on in the conversation of who these like monster D tackles are. But Jaheim Otis is going. He's as disruptive. He's athletic. He's big. He's tough. He's a really, really good defensive tackle. So again, he might be the best defensive lineman in this whole game too. So you talk like you do like the edge rushers maybe for Auburn. I just think when you look at what Alabama has in the middle and guys like Jamarian Latham, I thought looked really, really good. I thought Keanu Cott looks like a guy who might emerge as a guy like, oh, look at that guy. He's a first round guy. I think they have the guys to do it. Not very proven, obviously, on the edge, but that middle is monster.
But and you have so much upside on the edge, though. You talk about like Jan Zapier, Keon, like a lot of young talent at that edge rusher spot. Okay, I'm gonna go Auburn here because again, I think Jalen McLeod might be the best edge rusher on the field. I think Keldrick Falk might be the second one out. You know what I mean? So you look at the edge rusher spots. I obviously feel really good about Amaris Williams. I'm gonna lean Auburn. That's another one similar to that running back spot that in early May, I'm going to go Auburn. You talk to me middle of October. We could be talking about this Alabama defensive line being elite, but you haven't necessarily seen that from some of the young cats yet. I think Hugh Freeze did a really good job bringing in Isaiah Rakes and Philip Bleedy on the inside. So I'll go Auburn. And again, another one that I don't really feel good about. Going to the linebacker spot, I'm going to lead with this one because I know Alabama fans are already getting pissed at me. You got to go Alabama at the linebacker spot. I look at guys like Deontay Lawson and Jahad Campbell and say, how many better linebacker duos in the country can you find better than those two? So for that reason, I'm going to go Alabama. I think it's one of the better linebacker rooms, quite frankly, you see in the country. Who you got here?
Yeah, I think this one I feel pretty good about too with Alabama, just because I mean, you kind of said it. This is one of the better linebacker rooms in the country. Bringing Deontay Lawson back, I think, is huge. So much experience at this point. Really continues to get better and better each year. It feels like gets more physical. Obviously, can play with that speed and has that length that's a little unique for that linebacker role. But the way Jahad Campbell kind of stepped up once he grabbed the bull by the horns and took that position over, I think you saw monster improvements from that Alabama defense. And I mean, he's the guy there. I don't think there's any question this year. I think that makes it allows him to play a little bit better, take all the number one reps, just be that guy. I think this linebacker room is going to be really good for Bama.
Going to the secondary, really interesting conversation where, again, you probably have more proven guys in the Auburn secondary, right? You look at Kane Lee, who I think played phenomenal as a true freshman. You look at Keontae Scott. You bring in Jaron Thompson, who's going into, I believe, his 5th year of college football. More proven production in this Auburn secondary. You look at Alabama and say, insane young talent, right? Damani Jackson only going into his 3rd year. This is a guy that from a physical trait standpoint checks every single box. And just by not being in that USC defense anymore, feel like he probably just gets a little bit better. You talk about Xavier Brown, one of the more polished cornerbacks that you'll see as a true freshman coming from Mater Dei. Jalen Mbakwe, probably a little less polished, but an absolute freak show in terms of athleticism. Xavier Mincy. You look at the safety room and say, Keon Sabb, Malachi Moore, as a Michigan fan myself, Keon Sabb can play at a high level. Dylan, I'm going to go Alabama, and I'm just going to kind of bet on the upside a little bit. I think there's enough talent in that room where you're going to get proven. You're going to get guys that you trust heading into 2024. I think Auburn has a lot. Auburn replaces a lot of names in that secondary, so I'm going to go Alabama based on just kind of the upside that you have in that room. This is another one that I don't feel great about. Now I've pissed off both of the fan bases. Who you got, Alabama, Auburn?
Yeah, I'm going to fight you a little bit on this. Part of me wants to just take the pure talent, but at the end of the day, I kind of look. Kalen DeBoer, I feel like in a sense, is telling you that he thinks this room needs to get a little bit better. They've been super active in that spring portal window, and I like what they're adding. I think John Jones is a big add from Wake Forest, a lot of experience, and they needed that because you look, I mean, they're going to be basically a lot of true freshmen, a lot of guys who, even Keon Sabb, he's kind of been around the block a little bit, but hasn't played a ton of football yet. In Malachi Moore playing a new position. So a lot of things got to gel. I just love what Auburn's kind of been building in that secondary room now for a couple of years. I think, again, when Auburn was down, there was one unit that was kind of a shining star, and that secondary could always play some football. So I like when rooms have that kind of culture that it's been good for a long time. You feel good about cycling new guys in. I think Kayan Lee is going to be one of the better. Like, we're going to be talking about him as okay, this is a true number one. This is a dominant cornerback. I thought he looked good in the spring. I think he's going to have a big year. You have a fair amount of experience along with him. So I'll lean Auburn, but again, you kind of look. If you're just looking talent, I mean, that's a
I
freaky
think
talent.
I might be falling into that recruiting trap where I talk about so many of these guys throughout the spring where I just I gotta ride with the guys that I've been covering on the recruiting trail. I'm going to Alabama. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. A lot of fun conversations. Again, let it fly in the comment section. Talk a little bit of trash. That's what college football is about. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to you guys later.